Shore diving is popular and your only option in some places. Begin a shore dive by evaluating conditions and planning the dive with your buddies. Typically, you gear up with everything except your mask, fins, and snorkel. Then, walk to the water and put on your mask and snorkel before you enter. You may wade in and back out, but in some locations, you may enter with a giant stride from a dock and exit up a ladder, or use stairs to and from the water. If you wade in from shore, pay attention to bottom composition and hazardous or fragile aquatic life you might step on. Wearing foot protection may be wise. A common technique is to wade until you reach water deep enough in which to swim and then put your fins on. Then, depending on the dive site, you may descend and swim out on the bottom, or swim on the surface and descend along a float line. Generally, you ascend and exit by reversing these steps. Keep in mind that you can't wade in some environments, so you need to reach water deep enough in which to swim some other way. And when planning your dive, remember to plan to save enough air to use during your exit. Some dive sites require entering through mild surf. As a new diver, this means entering on a gently sloped beach with waves about waist high or less. Understanding water motion principles will help you enter through mild surf. Waves break, that is, form surf, in water slightly deeper than their own height. The bottom drags and then they tip over. So by noting where waves break, you can get an idea of the depth. Waves cause surge and undertow. Surge is a back and forth motion caused by waves passing overhead. The main concern is to not let it push you against rocks or anything hazardous. As you get deeper, surge dissipates. Undertow is water from breaking waves flowing back to sea under the incoming waves. The larger the waves and steeper the beach, the stronger the undertow. The main concern is that it can cause you to lose your balance, but in mild surf, it isn't very strong. Waves usually approach shore at an angle, which causes a longshore current. A longshore current flows parallel to the shoreline and tends to move you downshore during the dive. You can plan for this by swimming into the current during the dive or planning to exit somewhere downshore. Sometimes, waves push over an obstruction that blocks water from flowing back to sea on the bottom. When this happens, the water may funnel seaward through a narrow opening. Past the opening, the flow dissipates. This is called a rip current. Rip currents can be alarming because they carry you away from the shore rapidly, and they're too strong to swim against. Most accidents involving rip currents result from panic, not the current. If you get in one, don't fight it. Inflate your BCD and swim at a sustainable pace across it until you're clear. Then swim back to shore. Some areas may have recommendations specific to local rip currents. A wind blowing from shore can push surface water out to sea. This causes an upwelling, which is deeper water rising to replace the surface water. Upwellings tend to make dive conditions clearer but cooler, so you may need more exposure protection. The moon and the sun's gravities pull on the oceans, causing a slight bulge. As the Earth turns, this causes the tides, a rise and fall in the sea level. Tides cause currents, especially when they flow in and out of a narrow area, affect the depth, and can change the visibility. Tidal changes range from significant to unnoticeable, but they're very predictable. Generally, the best time to dive is at high tide. You can find local tide times and heights online or with an app. If the tide changes are significant, ask a local dive professional for an orientation to local techniques. Now let's look at the techniques you use to enter through mild surf. Start by watching where the waves break and their pattern, so you enter when waves are absent or at their smallest. Enter with everything in place except your fins, breathing from your regulator, and have just enough air in your BCD to float. With your buddy, wade quickly to deeper water. When a wave comes, stand like this for stability, and so your mask and regulator don't get dislodged. If you're using a float, tow it behind you. In water deep enough to swim, pull on your fins and surface swim out. The idea is to pass through the surf as quickly as you can. Switch to your snorkel to save air if you're going to surface swim a bit before descending. At the end of the dive, surface outside the surf zone. Check the wave pattern and time your entry for a lull. When ready, switch to your regulator and swim shoreward on the surface with your buddy. In water shallow enough in which to wade, deflate your BCD so you can stand and walk firmly. Watching the waves, remove your fins and wade ashore quickly. Brace as waves pass like you did before. If you stumble and waves make it hard to get up, don't try. Just crawl until you're almost out, then get your buddy to help you up. As a diver, you'll almost certainly dive from a boat. To prepare for a boat dive, inspect your gear ahead of time and be sure it's marked so it doesn't get mixed with someone else's. Space will be limited, so pack so you can work in and out of your bag. Put what you need last on the bottom and what you need first on top. Take what you want for your time aboard: dry clothes, beverages and snacks, sunscreen, towels, and so on. Prepare yourself by being well rested and properly fed, but also by taking steps to prevent seasickness. Seasickness rarely has long-term health effects, but it can ruin your trip. Suitable medication is available over the counter in most areas, but consult your physician if you have questions about what's appropriate for you. Underway, stay in open, fresh air and look at the horizon. If you start to feel ill, don't go into the head, you'll feel worse, and stay away from engine exhaust. If you think you're going to be sick, as a precaution, take someone with you and go to the leeward rail. Arrive for a boat dive well ahead of the departure time and stow your gear as the crew directs. Charter dive vessels usually have a roll call before departure. This is important for your safety because they will call roll or use some other procedure after each dive to be sure everyone's aboard. Follow whatever procedure the crew uses. Boat rides can take minutes or hours. If the ride's very short, you may gear up before the boat leaves dock. More commonly, though, you set up your kit, but wait until you reach or near the dive site to plan the dive with your buddy, get into your suit, and gear up. After setting up your gear and checking for a full cylinder, close the cylinder valve and purge the regulator until you get to the site. Be careful moving around carrying or wearing gear. It's easy to lose your balance on a rocking boat. Be sure to secure your equipment, even if you just step away for a moment. Waves or even boat wake can cause it to fall and injure someone, to break something, or to go overboard. Most dive boats have racks and bungees for this purpose. If not, lay your kit on the cylinder and block it so it can't roll or slide. At the dive site, the dive master briefs everyone about the site, including what's interesting to see, possible hazards, conditions, and other information you and your buddies will want for planning your dive. If it's the day's first dive, it may also cover general diving procedures, safety issues, and other information that doesn't have to be repeated. It usually includes the diver emergency recall signal. Be sure you know what the signal is and what you should do if you hear it. After the briefing, check conditions and the current direction. After making or reviewing your dive plan, you're ready to kit up and get in. Diving from small boats, you may gear up, perform your pre-dive safety check, and back roll in. Or you may float your kit and get into it after you get in. On large dive boats, you typically get into your kit seated. Put on everything except your fins and conduct your pre-dive safety check with your buddy. Then, go to the entry area and let the dive master know you're ready to go in. Put on your fins, get a buddy or hold on to something for balance, and give the dive master any special equipment you need him to hand you after you're in the water. The crew will usually recommend an entry technique suited to the boat, the conditions, and your physical characteristics. The best entry is usually the easiest one. Diving from a boat, depending upon conditions in the depth, you follow a line to the bottom. At many sites, you then follow the bottom deeper to your planned depth, swimming into the current as you already learned. When you or a buddy reaches a time, air, or other limit, you turn the dive and head back. When you reach the line, use it as an ascent reference and make your safety stop next to it, or hang on a bar or separate line many boats put over the side. As you pass under or alongside the boat, stay well away from the boat propellers. Do not approach or get near them, even when the engine is not running. Boat propellers can inflict catastrophic injuries, often fatal, with little warning. So treat them as though they will start turning at full force at any time. After your safety stop, surface in front of or next to the boat. Make yourself buoyant and signal the crew that you're okay. If there's no current, you may surface at the boat's ladder. If you have to surface away from the boat due to low air or to find it because you became disoriented, watch for boat traffic. Use your surface signaling devices to make yourself more visible if appropriate. Do not swim just below the surface. You're not visible to boats and could be hit by one. Either be at the surface and visible, or deep enough to be safely below boat traffic. How you exit the water into a boat varies. On larger dive boats, it's common to use the ladder exit you saw in Section 2. Diving from small boats, you usually don't have a suitable ladder. So it's common to get out of your gear in the water, climb aboard, and then pull up your gear. Keep your fins on if they'll help you exit. If physical limitations keep you from climbing a ladder, you can usually use this technique just as well diving from a large boat. You use lines to dive in mild to moderate current without getting swept behind the boat. After your pre-dive safety check, you typically enter the water. Then pull yourself along the swim line to the mooring or anchor line. Use the mooring or anchor line to maintain your place as you descend. You may have to go down hand over hand. Typically, the current will be weaker on the bottom. Swim into it for your dive. For your ascent, return to the mooring or anchor line and ascend along it. Make your safety stop, then ascend to the swim line. Follow the swim line to the ladder or trail line. Hang on to the trail line until it's your turn to exit. If you lose contact with a line and can't regain hold in the current, surface and swim quickly across the current to intercept the trail line. Should you miss the trail line, inflate your BCD, signal the crew to be picked up, and deploy your surface signaling devices. Relax. It may be a bit before all other divers are aboard and they can come after you. The crew may advise you of other procedures they use for diving in currents. It's highly unlikely, but if you surface and the boat's not in sight, stay calm, establish buoyancy, and wait to get picked up. The boat may have slipped from its mooring or anchor, or the captain may be dealing with an emergency. If there is a mooring or anchored float in place, hang on to it. Deploy your surface signaling devices so it's easier for the boat to locate you when it returns. If the shore and a reasonable exit is close enough that you can realistically expect to reach it without becoming exhausted, swim slowly toward it. Generally, dive planning has 4 stages. Advanced planning is the decision to go diving. You decide on a buddy, choose a dive site, agree on an objective, schedule logistics, and generally check dive conditions, as well as weather, surf, tides, and so on. Start preparation planning a day or more before you go. Inspect your gear and have your cylinder filled if necessary. Recheck conditions if it has been several days since you last checked, and start packing your gear as appropriate. Last-minute preparation is what you do right before you head out. Recheck conditions if appropriate for last-minute changes. Let someone know where you're going, including when you expect to return, what to do if you're late, and your mobile number. Gather personal items that you want with you, like your certification card, sunscreen, smartphone or tablet, beverages, and so on. Pack your gear bag with anything left remaining, and double-check that you're not forgetting anything. Pre-dive planning is the actual dive plan based on what you find at the site. You want to anticipate, discuss, and plan for as much as reasonably possible. Evaluate whether conditions are acceptable. Take as much time as you need. If not, find another site or cancel the dive. Agree on techniques, including where and how to enter and exit in your course. Review signals and communications as needed. Agree on buddy separation procedures and on time, depth, and air supply limits. You should also discuss what to do if an emergency arises. The dive planning slate has prompts to help you with pre-dive planning. You've seen several entries you may learn during the course. Another you may learn is the seated back roll. It's useful from small boats and swim steps that are close to the water. After your pre-dive safety check, sit at the edge, facing away from the water with your cylinder out over the surface, like this. Partially inflate your BCD. Breathe from your regulator and hold your mask. After your buddy confirms the area is clear, tuck your chin and lean back until your weight naturally rolls you in. Hold your mask until you bob back up. Then signal you're okay and clear the area for your buddy's entry. Besides dropping weights in an emergency, you need to be able to remove and replace your weights to make adjustments or for some entry and exit methods. Your instructor will show you the appropriate technique for your equipment, but here are some points that may apply to most systems. When removing weights, be careful not to drop them. Your buddy may help you, or you may hand them to a boat crew or someone on a dock. Before donning weights in the water, be sure you have ample buoyancy, and you may want to switch from snorkel to regulator so you can breathe in any position as you position the weight. With many weight-integrated BCDs, it helps to turn face up so the pouches slide into place, but this varies. Using a weight belt, hold the free end so weights don't slip off the end, and replace it with the loop method, like this. Cramps are painful involuntary muscle contractions. In diving, they're most common in the feet and legs. If you get a cramp, stop, signal your buddy, and let the muscle rest. Gently stretch and massage the muscle. Use your fin, like this. If your buddy has a cramp, you can help by giving her something to press against, like this. Wait a few minutes after the cramp subsides before continuing at a slower pace. After learning basic buoyancy control, the next level is hovering. Establish neutral buoyancy, then gently push off the bottom, like this. You should hover without using your hands and fins, rising and sinking a bit as you inhale and exhale. You can control your position a bit by slightly raising or lowering how deeply you breathe, but don't hold your breath. It may take some practice to get the knack. Your instructor will have you work on this until you can hover for at least 30 seconds. After you're properly weighted and neutrally buoyant, you check and adjust your trim, your balance in the water. With your buddy, swim slowly in midwater. Pause and relax to see how your body wants to orient itself. Ideally, you want to trim yourself so you tend to stay in a relatively horizontal, face-down position, like this. If your feet rise or sink significantly, Or if you roll face up, your instructor will help you reposition your weight and gear for a better trim. This is something you'll gradually learn to adjust from one dive to the next. The Peak Performance Buoyancy course further refines these skills beyond what you master in this course. Ask your instructor or visit PADI.com for more information. Once you've experienced air depletion and practiced alternate air source use, you'll put them together. When it becomes hard to breathe after your instructor closes the valve, signal for air. Secure your buddy's alternate air source and switch to it. Your instructor will reopen your valve so you can use your own if you need to for some reason. After a few breaths and getting settled, swim with your buddy for at least a minute sharing air. This gives you practice in sharing air and staying together while swimming for about as long as it might typically take to reach the surface in a real emergency. Your instructor will have you finish by actually ascending to the surface. Orally inflate your BCD to simulate not having air for low pressure inflation. Keep using the alternate air source until you're buoyant.